Hey there, Christy here with your latest installment of Tidbit Tuesdays. And in this video, I want to talk about linking workflows and why you might consider doing this, why it might matter to you, and how to use it to work smarter, not harder in your business. And I want to kind of use this as an opportunity to also sort of plant the seed about how you can think about that first stage in your customer journey, the attract stage, to really be thinking about strategically how do you bring people into your world and use different workflows for getting to know your ideal client, or I guess them getting to know you, and how do you earn that place being able to sell to them. So when I talk about linking workflows, what I want to do is I want to focus on the first three workflows that we typically focus on in our business. That's how we go about capturing leads, how do we welcome them into our community, indoctrinate them on who we are, what we do, why it matters, that sort of thing, and then how do we nurture them over time. Now, all three of these workflows, by default, when you signed up for Automation on a Mission, these were installed in your system, and they are linked to go together, meaning this one goes to this one goes to this one. And I'm going to show you really quickly how easy that part was. So when somebody comes into your world and they fill out your lead magnet, we've likely created an automation that looks similar to this, or use the one that was already in your system. And then as we move through the different series here, we'll see that at the end of the workflow, at the bottom, they're going to be added to the next workflow. And it even tells you which workflow they're being added to. Add to indoctrination workflow. And then down here, add to indoctrination workflow. Now in this one, the scenario is, and why there are two potential paths is, did they click on the link for whatever the resource is, the lead magnet is that you offered? And if they didn't, then they're going to get a reminder email. But if they did, then they're going to move in a different path altogether, because at the end of the day, the goal is to move them into the indoctrination workflow. So no matter what happens in this particular automation, all roads lead to the same place, and that is to the next step in our customer journey. So after they get from the lead capture workflow into the indoctrination, now the nice thing is you can have a different trigger, and I think this is probably in here because there was a training video on it, because this is just a demo account. But all these triggers do is allow you all the other ways to bring people into this specific workflow. But in the case of they came in through a lead magnet, now we're going to welcome them into our community, this doesn't matter. We're sort of skipping this step. As soon as that add to indoctrination workflow step was added to the lead magnet workflow, it basically picks up here and then moves forward. So in our indoctrination workflow, we're going to give them an experience, yada, yada, yada. We're going to send all the emails out. We're going to do the things. And then, similar to what we had in our lead magnet workflow, it's going to move them to the next stage of the customer journey, and that is long-term nurture. All roads lead to the same place. Long-term nurture, long-term nurture, long-term nurture. And then the final one is we're going to go into the long-term nurture workflow right quick, and you'll see here that you could have somebody, in this case, enter this workflow via a tag, or in our case, we've pushed them in here and they're going to start at this point and go through this entire experience. So why have these three things as separate workflows? And this is going to be a really specific explanation, but I want you to be thinking about this in your business. How can this play out in other strategies? Or how does this strategy play out in other scenarios in your business? So let me explain to you the who, what, how, and why to why we have these three set up the way they are. Number one, many businesses have multiple lead magnets. And so could you create a separate indoctrination and long-term nurture for every single one of them? Yes. And how much time do you really want to be spending writing copy or copying automations? It increases the risk for mistakes. It increases the chances that you've got multiple places where you have to make changes if something in your business changes. And so for me, I have one indoctrination and one long-term nurture, and I probably have about a dozen different lead magnets. So my lead magnets can operate in their own ecosystem. And then from the lead magnet, we're going to go into the same indoctrination. And then I also know my ideal client, my prospects, are getting the same quality experience regardless as to what lead magnet they chose, what avenue they chose to come into my world. And so it's really nice to have this ability to say, I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time I come up with a new idea for a lead magnet. I just create the lead magnet and the delivery system for that, and I push them into my indoctrination. Now, in terms of that indoctrination versus long-term nurture, because both of them are essentially helping educate and build rapport with my ideal client, why have them separated? And the reason for that is, in my opinion, I do not believe that somebody asking for a lead magnet and first learning about who we are and what we do for Automation on a Mission gives me the right to sell to them. So at this point, I need to educate them. I need to do a little bit more to help that, build that relationship, to close the gap a little bit. And so how I'm going to go about doing that is starting in the indoctrination. So my indoctrination series covers a little bit about who I am, what we do, what can you expect from me. Let me share, some testimonials to, build some credibility with you, that sort of thing. So at no point in my initial indoctrination emails there am I selling. All I'm doing is giving value. Maybe I give another free resource. Maybe I share some of my top performing blogs. What I'm doing is going to look an awful lot like the long-term nurture, but it's really about setting the initial tone. And so I've got about 5 emails in my indoctrination, and when they have finished my indoctrination, then I mark them as marketable. And so one of the tags that we give during the indoctrination series is a marketable tag. And so until they've completed that welcome series, they're not eligible for receiving blogs, getting sales messaging, et cetera, et cetera. And but again, it's only 5 days. It's not like it's going to span months and, oh, by the way, I've got this like dead weight. I want to move them through that process as quickly and efficiently as possible, but I also want to set an appropriate tone before I put them into any place where they might be exposed to additional stuff that's just a distraction or a sales request, before I've earned the real opportunity for me to do that. So then once they've completed the indoctrination, they're tagged as marketable and they're moved into the long-term nurture. And then the difference is, and why I really separate these two things, isn't about, when do they get that tag and when are they considered marketable. It's about sort of creating, sort of like a bookmark or a page break in between that experience, because these guys are all marketable, and that means they can be sold to. So let's say you're bopping your way through my long-term nurture and I've got a special promotion that I want to start pushing out. I'm going to turn off the long-term nurture and turn on my sales engine. And then when the sales engine is complete, I'm going to turn on the long-term nurture and turn off the sales engine. So it's easy to turn those off and on without impacting anybody that's in my indoctrination that's still getting the tone set, still getting expectations, all that kind of stuff. So the reason I want them separated is because I want to control the experience they're having and ensure that I'm not being a tacky salesperson. And the reason and the way that we go about stacking one to another is by ensuring that at the conclusion of one workflow, we're pushing them into the next workflow. So how can this sort of situation play out where you have linked automations? One place could be what happens when somebody becomes a client or a customer of yours. Maybe you trigger a pipeline stage, or you trigger sending the contract, but the next stage is contract reminders. Maybe it is what happens after they sign the contract. Those are things that you can certainly do. Maybe it's connected to how you manage access to membership content and things like that. So I hope that's helpful in terms of thinking about how you might be creating an interconnected relationship with your different automations. But as always, let us know if you have any questions.